There we go. Chair's having a little trouble with her microphone. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our public hearing on the proposed 2024 tax rates and various fee amendments. I'm here joined by all my colleagues and my vice chair, Mr. Karantonis. And this evening, we're going to get feedback from the public and you all here on the proposed tax rates and fees, and information on what's available is on our county website. And I think our manager may have a brief presentation, perhaps some updates to give us before we move to public testimony, but I don't think it's a long presentation.
Yes, Mr. Stevenson promised me he'd be brief.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I have just a few slides just to highlight the areas that we'll be hearing public testimony tonight on. So the first slide is on the tax rates that are proposed and advertised. The real estate tax rate, the current rate is $1.3 cents per $100 of assessed value. As I mentioned on Tuesday, the manager proposed a 1.5 cent tax increase with the board giving themselves some flexibility, advertise an additional penny on the tax rate. All the other taxes for real estate remain the same as calendar year 2023, as you can see on the slide here. And that includes both the commercial transportation tax, personal property, and our business improvement districts. Next slide highlights the various fee advertisements. It cuts across the organization. Almost all of these fees are for cost recovery. And they are anywhere from the household solid waste rate for our trash pickup to fees for our development services and parks and public safety. This next slide shows the impact of the various proposals in the budget. The section on the left that's more blue is at the manager's proposed tax rate, and then to the right, what that impact would be at the advertised rates for taxes and fees. And then finally, the timeline that we're in the middle of with public hearings here, work sessions we're holding with the board for adoption by the board toward the latter part of April, and our fiscal year, which begins on July 1st. So with that summary, I will turn it back over to you, Madam Chair, for public testimony.
Thank you. You were indeed brief. Thank you very much. So we're ready to hear from our public speakers. A couple of things. I think most of you are veterans, but a few may be new. If you're in person, the podium height can be adjusted. There's a up and down arrows, a button on the right, and you can press it, and the podium will come down, so you don't have to lean way over or stand on tippy toes to use the microphone. If you're submitting documents as part of your testimony, please hand clerk who's over to my right, or to Mr. Kushner, who's right there and heading out back. Either place would be fine. Please put your name and contact information on all documents. For remote speakers, please keep your microphones muted and your cameras off until you're called on to speak. You will need to unmute yourselves, and obviously on the phone, if you may know, you use *6. If you're on the computer, there's a microphone icon on the toolbar in the bottom. Just click that in the Teams app. And I think I will leave it at that. Madam Clerk, would you please call the first two speakers?
Yes, our first speaker is Pete Scampavia, followed by Cherry Takamoto.
Hi, I'm Pete Scampavia, and I'm talking about the PI program. When I was a baby, I met my best friend Lori in Kehoe, and we've been best friends ever since. I live with my best friend from middle school, and I have 2 jobs. My dad doesn't want to raise taxes, but my mom wants to fund people with disabilities. What would you like to do?
Thank you. Nice to see you again, Mr. Scampavia. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Cherry Takamoto, followed by Jeremiah Howard.
Thank you for listening to me once again. I'm just here speaking up for people with developmental disabilities and the Parent-Infant Education Program. Pete just shared that one of his best friends he met when he was at the PI program. When the service facilitators don't have time to get everything together for families, the families not only don't get access to services, but they don't get access to each other. And none of you are old enough to know this, but when this guy was a baby, The PI program asked me to come and speak before the board when they were going to raise the rates for the families, because for families who couldn't, like ours, who couldn't afford it. And at that time I said, hello, and then the chair goes, it's okay. You can come back later. Go, no, I'm going to do it right now. But as you can see, I've grown up to be a pretty fair advocate. And not only did Pete get his start at the PI program, but I got my start as an advocate for not only Pete, but other folks through that. So please fund the PI program, fund those 2 service coordinators that are mostly, the other for the developmental disabilities, the 2 service coordinators that are primarily funded through the Medicaid waiver. That's to fund the folks who now will have access to the developmental disabilities waiver, and those are primarily funded through Medicaid dollars. Thank you very much for your attention and your support.
Thank you. I am old enough to remember, I wasn't in this room, but I do remember what was happening at the time. This is a tax rate hearing. I think everybody else is pretty specifically on tax rates. We'll take the next speaker.
Our next speaker is Jeremiah Howard, followed by Audrey Clement.
Good evening. The pandemic work-from-home phenomenon has become our way of life. Companies are renegotiating their office space leases. Commercial real estate, from which the county derives 45% of its revenue, is facing uncertain times. Arlington homeowners face the looming prospect of dramatic tax rises. Apartment dwellers can count on rent increases. The county manager has proposed economies to minimize this first round of tax rises, but he needs clear guidance from the board to do more. The board can develop that guidance by boldly reassessing the effectiveness of even our most well-intentioned programs, such as the ART bus system. Our green on the outside, methane burning on the inside buses are an expensive ecological fraud. For 25 years, they have failed to lure Arlingtonians out of their cars. They trundle around the county most of the day, empty of passengers, pumping carbon unnecessarily into the atmosphere. The 25-year ART bus experiment didn't work. Let's end it. I also urge the board to inquire into its past decisions that continue to constrain the county's development of residential ratables. The historical marking of profoundly unremarkable garden apartments has prevented their replacement with energy-efficient, tax-generating mixed-income housing. Let's respond to the national housing crisis, but in a way that reduces our carbon footprint and increases county revenues. And let's anticipate the straitened economics of the next several years by shedding those budgetary expenditures that fail to achieve our goals and removing our self-imposed impediments to increased revenues. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Audrey Clement, followed by Leonore Edwards.
Welcome, members of the board. I'm dedicated to this year. In a February 29, 2024 presentation, School Superintendent Francisco Duran projected a FY25 school budget deficit of $29.5 million and argued for a 2.5-cent tax rate hike, or 1 cent above what the county manager himself has proposed. Even with a 2.5-cent tax rate hike and $10 million of additional money from the state, Duran projects a $3.4 million deficit. Duran's numbers appear muddled. On the one hand, he lists $25.1 million in unfunded core needs. He also says that the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, JLARC, estimates that annually APS is underfunded by approximately $51 million. Elsewhere, he puts the gap between revenues and expenses at $29.5 million. Among the unfunded core needs, Duran lists an $11.8 million additional 2% cost of living increase for staff to provide a 5.3% average compensation increase, which would advance, according to Duran, our goal of being the top 3 local school divisions for compensation. This number is suspect inasmuch as the FY 2024 Washington Area Boards of Education Guide reports that average Arlington teacher salary at $92,000 is just under highest ranking Falls Church. and more than $6,000 per year higher than Fairfax County at about $86,000 per year. Another suspect wish list is $8.7 million to reduce class size by 2. Why does Arlington need to reduce its class size by 2 when the WAVE guide indicates that Arlington has the lowest middle school and secondary class sizes of any Northern Virginia school district?
Thank you.
Bottom line,
Thank
Durand's projections should not be used
Thank you, Ms.
without more.
Clement.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lenore Edwards, followed by Marjorie Green.
All right, good evening. My name is Lenore Edwards, and thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. I have been an Arlingtonian since 1974, so it's been a long time, and I represent the Knox community. I stand before you today to express my concern about the proposed increase in real estate tax for residents in Arlington, Virginia, okay? This proposal, which suggests a 500 to 4.7% increase, is not just a matter of numbers. It's a matter of livelihoods, of homes, and of our community. Firstly, let's consider the financial burden this places on homeowners. A $500 increase may not seem significant to some, but to many families, it can mean the difference between comfort and hardship. It's an additional expense that many did not anticipate and when they invested in their homes. Secondly, we must consider the impact on our senior citizens. Many of our elderly neighbors live on fixed incomes. For them, every dollar counts. An increase in their property tax could force them to make tough decisions about their budgets and their futures, and they don't all just fit in that limited real estate relief program. Furthermore, the tax increase could discourage potential homeowners from investing in Arlington. We pride ourselves on being a welcoming community, but this could send a message that Arlington is becoming unfavorable for homeowners, but affordable for those multifamily home renters, and we cater to builders. Lastly, we must ask ourselves, is this the best solution? Before we place this burden on the homeowners, have we exhausted all other avenues? Have we worked hard enough to get state and federal funding for affordable housing programs so we don't harm others to help others? Are we giving large corporations with only promises for Arlington and other commercial entities more tax benefits than our residents who have to take all the tax burden increases? How have we done everything to get everything done? Anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next speaker is Marjorie Green, followed by Joshua Falb.
Good evening. I'm speaking tonight as a 20-plus year resident of Arlington and a taxpayer, although my motivation to speak comes from the work I've been doing in the community on youth mental health and housing. I support a property tax increase in FY 2025 of at least 1.5 cents. I recognize the challenge for some homeowners. I also recognize that our community has critical needs that need to be addressed now. Coming out of the pandemic over the last couple of years, you've tried really hard to avoid tax rate increases, even as needs have grown and commercial properties and commercial tax revenues have declined. Now you're losing a lot of the federal spending that helped offset some of the costs that the county has had to deal with, and you're still waiting to hear what kind of help that our schools will get from the state. Meanwhile, Arlington's teens, like their peers elsewhere, are struggling with significant mental health and drug use challenges, and they need help now. And a growing number of families are grappling with how to stay in their homes, either facing eviction, self-evicting, or foregoing food, health, or other critical expenses to pay rising rents. Investing now is the right thing to do. It can help to prevent much greater expenditures in the future as unmet needs balloon. In my experience, most Arlington residents care about each other and about the county's future. They want a vibrant, diverse, compassionate community. That means prioritizing investments to respond to needs like these. Thank you for your commitment. Good luck with the tough decisions ahead.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Joshua Falb, followed by Craig Zaroff.
Good evening, members of the board. I come here as a taxpayer to support the maximum tax increase to allow for more support of Arlington Public Schools. For too long, APS hid their needs behind a combination of reserve uses and failures to fund compensation. This year, things are different, and APS has come to you with an actual budget of needs. The county board should support their request through this tax increase. Some may say APS has wasted money and needs to make cuts. Well, I cannot stand here and tell you, in my unprofessional opinion, that in all cases, APS has made the best use of taxpayers' money. And if I'm being honest, there are options and choices that are expensive for taxpayers and leave neighborhood schools worse off. There are future cuts to be made through a discussion of what we truly value in Arlington, and I hope the schools have that honest discussion. However, that is not a reason to starve the schools of the necessary funds that they need. Nobody in this room could look at me with sincerity and say that they are proud of how Arlington County has spent every single dollar in past budgets either. And to anyone who might, meet me at the bus stop at the corner of Walter Reed and Columbia Pike, and we'll talk about money well spent. It is said we should treat our children well, for they will choose our nursing home. Treating them well costs money, and I ask you that you support the schools through a full increase in taxes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Craig Zaroff, followed by Jenny Rizzo.
Say the last part of that.
Craig Zaroff, followed by Jenny Rizzo.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Hello, folks. While Arlington County is a welcoming county, it winds up being done on the backs of the people who pay taxes. And of course, that's the way the world runs, and I understand that. But when there are benefits and services given to people who pay little or no taxes, the programs wind up being on the backs of the people who do pay taxes. I understand it's the way that things roll, but it doesn't have to continue being like that. Some of these benefits can be given at a minimum of, can be given with a minimum of expense, of cost to the recipients of these benefits, instead of them being constantly free and on the backs of the taxpayers. How many people that live on the north side can't afford to buy the house that they are living in? Having a larger tax is only going to make this more of an issue. One of the things that can be looked at, although small, is we see a lot of county cars driving around the streets. Have the department heads make an accounting of all the cars that they have, develop something that tells them how many miles are put on these cars per week or per month, and those that are used the least get rid of. So it's not a continuing expense to the county and the taxpayers. I understand that there's going to be a survey done by the county as something like a wage survey. Now, I don't think that's going to get us anything. It's going to cost about $1 million. We know who makes the least amount of money. We know that's not going to change. So why spend $1 million on a survey that we know what the results are now? It's just not needed. It's just a constant thing that we're disappointed that we, as the taxpayers, have to not enjoy the burden, but bear the burden of all the decisions that are made.
You've got that.
Many things of which are for people who don't support the tax base that we have. Are there any meetings here that you have where you make a decision based on people not wanting you to do something? Or do you always do whatever you guys want to do, regardless of what is said?
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jenny Rizzo, followed by Nada Mears.
Good evening. I'm Jenny Rowan Rizzo. I've lived here in Arlington since 2002 and have been a homeowner for about 20 years. I'm a parent of 2 high school students at Wakefield, and I'm also the chair of the Advisory Council on Teaching and Learning, one of APS's citizen advisory groups. I'm here tonight to support the tax increase of 2.5 cents and to request your support for the APS budget to the fullest extent possible. There are a number of reasons why, but I want to focus on 2 main components of the APS budget need. One is how much the modern responsibilities of our schools have grown. Our schools are now expected to do so much more than they used to be. They are on the front lines of addressing mental health issues. They have unprecedented challenges in tackling the fallout of disrupted educations, whether of students who were here in Arlington during the pandemic or for those who have come to us with limited or interrupted education from elsewhere. Our schools are no longer just holding the occasional assembly on the dangers of drugs. They are working urgently and collaboratively to make sure that kids don't die from a single bad decision or bad mistake. And our schools don't just aim for kids to have 1 or 2 teachers who are really impactful on them. They work tirelessly to ensure that every single one of our students has an adult in school who they trust and can go to every single year of their education here, and that each child feels safe physically and emotionally. This isn't just a little bit more, this is orders of magnitude more than we used to expect of schools. They're expected to do all this, and it's absolutely paramount that they continue to provide excellent academic education. Our system leaders and our teachers have the evidence and they have the experience, but they are constrained. Teachers have too many students and too many additional responsibilities to be able to provide the specific, personalized feedback on assignments that they need to for students to be able to know what to do to improve. The amount of time it takes teachers to provide that personalized feedback on each assignment doesn't add up to an amount of time that fits into a day, a week, a month, the school year. It just doesn't add up. My second point is that our education is at a critical juncture when it comes to human resources. As you know, teachers are leaving the profession at alarming rates, and the pipeline for new teachers has been shrinking for a long time and continues to. We've had counselor positions that languish open for months. Arlington must provide competitive salaries for our educators. Without it, we are likely to lose many of them to other districts or even leaving the profession. We can't provide the status quo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next speaker is Nida Mears, followed by Angie Kramer.
Hello. I appreciate the opportunity to speak at this hearing. Arlington County prides itself on its rich history of affordable housing leadership. Yet here's Arlington County proposing a real estate tax increase to make housing even less affordable. What a paradox. How can that be? Look, Arlington County has received a windfall of real estate tax revenues on residential properties over the last decade or more as the values of all homes in the county have skyrocketed. Also, home builders have continued to replace older homes with newer homes that are double the assessment value. How can it be necessary or appropriate to raise the rate by potentially 2.5 cents when revenue increases have and should be coming from increases in property values, not an increase to the rate? According to taxrates.org, at $4,564 per year, Arlington County has one of the highest median property taxes in the United States, ranked 40th of the 3,143 counties in the country. That means the average homeowner in Arlington already pays more in real estate taxes than 98% of homeowners in the entire United States. If the majority of other U.S. counties can get along fine with less real estate tax per resident, why can't Arlington County? The average yearly property tax paid by Arlington County residents amounts to about 3.55% of their yearly income. Compared to the rest of the United States, we pay more of our income to real estate taxes than 88% of the country does. Arlington has proposed a budget 4.7% higher than last year, more than double what the Fed feels is an acceptable rate of inflation, and 1.5 times the actual rate of current inflation. The increase in the real estate tax rate is expected to cost the average homeowner an additional $472 on top of other increases proposed in the budget at a time when the majority of households are reeling from rampant inflation in food, energy, and housing from the past few years. The county should do their homework and bring spending in line with revenue expectations without the need to continue to pile on increased costs to already struggling families. This proposal is simply unjust and an unfair burden to the homeowners of this county and is at cross purpose with goals and efforts to preserve affordable housing in the county.
Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Angie Kramer, followed by our final speaker, Alice Hogan.
My name is Angie Kramer, and I'm asking you, pleading you, to please raise my taxes to the full advertised amount. Why? We are chronically underfunding Arlington Public Schools. Citations will come in an upcoming email, but very quickly, like my poster board. These are the proposed real estate taxes for our surrounding counties. All of them are proposing a 4-cent advertised increase in the real estate tax rate, except for Falls Church City, which is at the highest tax rate in our region. The percent increase in school budgets across neighboring counties, APS has a 1.5% increase over fiscal year 24 adopted budget with your 46% local transfer. Moved the decimal to 15% with a 49% local transfer. I'm sure the school board would appreciate this number more than this. ACPS has a 4% increase in school budget transfer. And FCCPS, our little tiny county just south of us, has a 6.8 increase with an 81% local transfer. This is a jurisdiction that values its public schools. But why does APS need more money? Here we go. Federal funding represents 2.8% of the APS budget, while federal funding is increased modestly for this upcoming year. Depending on where the November election goes, the school systems across the country may not fare so well. In 2023 funding proposals, House Republicans tried to cut a broad range of critical programs like Title I by 80%, IDEA, Title IV Part A, which is mental health supports. If Trump wins and the Republicans wins in November, this is our reality for public schools. The state provides 13.5% of APS's budget. It will actually decrease this upcoming year at APS by 5.1%. Just this school year, school districts had some surprising initiatives that they had to fund with their operating budget in the middle of the school year. Tutoring programs and needed staff raises. Our governor has shown that he doesn't value public education. I learned last night he's threatening to veto funding of HB 30 for K-12 public education. We will not know, our school districts will get their disbursement until the last minute. You are the only stable funding source. Every homeowner in Arlington is invested in the health of APS, whether or not they have school-aged children. We might move here because of the proximity to DC, but what keeps us here long-term are our schools. You need to show that you prioritize and value your school system as much as the counties. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker and final speaker is Alice Hogan.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm Alice Hogan. I'm with Navaja's Arlington Housing Alliance, and I'm here to encourage you to consider the full 2.5-cent tax rate increase. The rate has not been increased in recent years, and this is an opportunity while you decide to raise the rate by 1.5 pennies to raise it 2.5 pennies and use some of that additional revenue to fund affordable housing, one of the county's top priorities. Why is this a good policy decision for you all to be making for our county? Because housing is essential. We talk about the environment. We need more housing in Arlington to cut down on traffic and pollution and to encourage walkability and transit use. We talk about economic vitality. We need housing here so workers choose to work at Arlington businesses and for businesses to choose Arlington. And we talk about mental health. We know stable, affordable housing is a platform for a good life. Students can thrive and parents can survive when not worried about how to pay the rent this month. Arlington is known as a housing leader and well respected for our AHIF, Affordable Housing Investment Fund, which we use to support preservation and development of affordable units. And yet the AHIF has never had a stable funding stream. Does it make sense for us to for this high county priority to be subject to the whims of annual budgetary cycles? We rely on our development partners to preserve and create our housing, and yet we cannot assure them of funding availability even 1 year out. This is why they are developing elsewhere, because they go where they can rely on availability of gap funding. Our housing development partners leverage the AHIF funds $3, $4, even $5 to every $1 of AHIF investment towards achieving our community's goal. And every time we tell them we don't have the funds, we are leaving money on the table and falling further behind on our master plan goal, which today is a full 4,000 units behind. If you raise the tax rate the full 2.5 pennies, you could dedicate some or all of that new revenue as a predictable, ongoing funding stream of nearly $9 million in new monies to create an annual base for AHIF funding. This year, the AHIF may get as much as $20.5 million. That's amazing. And yet, to achieve the 4,000 CAFs we still need in Arlington, the AHIF needs to be funded at $40 million every year. So we are falling behind by at least $20 million every single year. Please commit to stabilizing the AHIF. We encourage you to vote for 1 more penny and let it be for housing. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's our final speaker?
Yes.
Ms. Kaur, I believe we need to keep the hearing open until 8 o'clock. Nope, she's saying we do not.
I don't know why that would be.
Okay, in the past, I remember we used to wait because we'd advertise, but if we can finish now, we're good.
We
It's fine.
advertised that the public sign-up would close at 7.
Aha.
We made that
changed it.
procedural change at the beginning of the year.
I missed that. All right, then we are indeed done. So I want to thank everybody who's joined us here and virtually also for coming. Thank you. The board next meets on Thursday, April 11 for our budget wrap-up work session. And at the moment, I'm going to make a motion to close this public hearing on the tax rates and fees and to carry over action to the April 20, 2024 county board meeting beginning at 9 a.m. Is there a second? Okay, motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. 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 All right. We are, I believe, adjourned. Thank you.